This is an important reading of Agrippa. Today we're getting into a pretty controversial topic, and that has to do with animal parts in magic. So when reading Agrippa, we need to go through all of these chapters and take a look at all of this information so that we could understand magic as it was practiced in the 16th century. And also, many of these practices are much more ancient. As we'll go into here, a lot of this comes to us from late antiquity. So thank you so much for joining me today. This is going to be an interesting topic. And this is the last chapter. After this, things are going to get really interesting with Agrippa. So after this, we're going to be going into magical alphabets and into all the different planets and their symbols and all kinds of things, working with spirits. But today we're working through chapter 21. Now this chapter, because it deals with there's a lot of things like mermaids and mythical creatures, so it's really interesting. Pliny the Elder, he wrote 37 volumes of his natural history, so it's like an encyclopedia of every animal. So it's a collection of everything that the ancient Romans knew about the natural world. So we're getting into animal mythology. So animal symbolism and animal mythology is interesting, not just for using, let's say, an alligator paw in magic, like we do sometimes nowadays in hoodoo, but also for looking at omens and for astral projection, things that you might see in your dreams or scrying stone, understanding animal symbolism. We need to understand that magic was often a communion with the natural world. We see magic in the rustling of the wind. We learn to speak the language of trees and natural things. We have the genus loci, or the spirit of the place, the genus loci. And we have the knowledge that is found in stones and plants and animals. I really don't like reading this particular chapter, though, because it gets a little bloody. So, I believe that a lot of what we're going to read here is obsolete. We can use plants, we can use herbs, stones, metals. We don't have to use animal parts. But what Agrippa talks about here, which you see much later on in the Wheel of Wisdom and such, in Welcome Manuscript 3203, the Wheel of Wisdom, it talks about getting animal parts while they're still alive. So it's really awful. But we need to look at all aspects of Agrippa. So the name of this chapter, of the virtues of things which are in them only in their lifetime, and such as remain in them even after their death. So I really don't like talking about this chapter in some ways, because it talks about getting the eye of a certain animal or a tooth or whatever while it's still alive and panting. Now, also something that needs to be touched upon is there are some New Age authors and things that try to reinterpret this as being symbolic of an herb. So the eye of a wolf is actually some type of plant or something. I don't think that that's accurate. I think that's New Age nonsense, but people are free to have their opinions. I don't think if you ask Stephen Skinner or Joseph H. Peterson, 9 times out of 10 when it says an animal part, I think that's exactly what it's referring to. But let's go ahead and get into this chapter. But even if we're not using animal parts for magic, understanding animal symbolism is important for what you'll see in your dreams, omens, astral projection, sometimes things you'll see in your scrying stone. So animals may come to you. You may see animals on your way to work or in your dreams. So very important. So we're reading the 3 books of occult philosophy, Book 1, Chapter 21, of the virtues of things which are in them in their lifetime, and such as remain in them even after their death. Normally, every second video I do on Patreon only, but I really wanted to go ahead and work through this chapter. So, here we go. 3 Books of Occult Philosophy, Book 1, Chapter 21. And we're getting into animal symbolism. Or not just symbolism, but the qualities and powers in different animals. Moreover, we must know that there are some properties in things only whilst they live, and some that remain after their death. So the little fish Echinus stop ships, and the basilisk and the catoblepa kill with their sight when they are alive, but when they are dead do no such thing. So what is it talking about the fish Echinus? This is actually pretty interesting, and this goes into ancient Roman lore. So this is knowledge that was cataloged in the 1st century. Again, Pliny the Elder is who Agrippa's looking at here. Pliny the Elder was born in 23 AD, and he died in 79 AD in Mount Vesuvius, that volcanic eruption with Pompeii and all of that. But the fish is called the remora. And it's actually interesting. If you look up remora fish, that's R-E-M-O-R-A, remora fish, or the Echinus, it's actually a fish that has like a suction thing on its head, that it attaches itself to sharks. It attaches itself to fish that are bigger. It attaches itself to boats, and it like hitches a ride. So the remora fish, and this is actually true, it's the hitchhiker of the sea. This particular fish has like a little suction thing on its head. It attaches itself to sharks or bigger fish, and it like hitches a ride. So it's pretty interesting. And the remora is known to slow down sharks and things. They have to use more energy because they have these little fish attached to them. And the mythology in the ancient Greek and Roman world is that they stop ships. Something very interesting is that according to Pliny the Elder, this particular fish, the remora, was the cause of the death of the Emperor Caligula. His ships were stopped. Caligula. And then also it caused the downfall of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, is kind of the mythology. So Gaius Plinius Caecilius Secundus, okay, Pliny the Elder, he wrote down everything that the Romans knew about the natural world. He died in Vesuvius, and according to mythology, in the Battle of Actium, Mark Antony and Cleopatra, their ships were stopped because of this fish, and it caused them to lose the Battle of Actium, is one story. Okay, I'm not saying it's historical, it's one story. And that Caligula had to port, and the next day was assassinated. So it's interesting, you think of emperors. I mean, Mark Antony, the Emperor Caligula, these great men that are taken down by a fish. It kind of shows that the natural world has power. So let's take a look at this fish here. I'm going to a footnote here on the Echinus. This is actually footnote 5 in chapter 10 of Agrippa. The remora, or sucking fish, Echinus, remora, was supposed to have power of retarding and even stopping the progress of ships. So now we're quoting from Pliny the Elder. This is from the 1st century. This is 2,000 years old, mythology about this animal. So this is from the 1st century. And Pliny was being read by people throughout the Middle Ages, throughout the Renaissance. This was like their world book encyclopedia for any of you that are old enough to know what a World Book Encyclopedia is. So we're reading Pliny on this fish. There's a very small fish, and this is Pliny's Natural History, published in the 1st century, so 2,000 years ago. There's a very small fish that is in the habit of living among the rocks, and is known as the echinus. It is believed that when this has attached itself to the keel of a ship, its progress is impeded, and that it is from this circumstance that it takes its name. For this reason also, it has a disgraceful repute as being employed in love philters, so love magic, love philters, and for the purpose of retarding judgments and legal proceedings. Evil properties which are only compensated by a single merit that it possesses. It is good for staying fluxes of the womb in pregnant women, and preserves the fetus up to birth. So according to Pliny the Elder in the 1st century, this fish was being used for love magic, and to slow down, not just ships, but legal proceedings. Let's say you want a legal proceeding to take a while, you can use the fish echinus or remora. Lucan speaks of the sucking fish that holds back the ship in the midst of the waves, while the eastern breeze stretches the rigging. Ovid says, "There is too the little sucking fish, wondrous to tell, a vast obstruction to ships." So, there's a lot here. So that's where Agrippa just mentions in passing the fish echinus. So what does it say? Chapter 21 of Book 1, of the virtues of things which are in them only in their lifetime, and such as remain in them even after their death. Moreover, we know that there are some properties in things only whilst they live, and some that remain after their death. So the little fish echinus, or remora, stops ships, and the basilisk and catoblepa kill with their sight, when they are alive, but when they are dead do no such thing. So what is the basilisk? Again, Pliny the Elder talks about this. There's a footnote here on the basilisk. It's a serpent that when it looks you in the eye, it kills you. The basilisk. There is the same power also in the serpent. We're reading Pliny the Elder from the 1st century here. This quote. There is the same power also in the serpent called the basilisk. It is produced in the province of Cyrene, being not more than 12 fingers in length. Little bitty thing, 12 fingers in length. It has a white spot on the head, strongly resembling a sort of diadem. When it hisses, all the other serpents fly from it, and it does not advance its body like the others by a succession of folds, but moves along upright and erect upon the middle. So it's like up in the middle, and it like moves like this and kills with its sight. It destroys all shrubs, not only by its contact, but those even that it has breathed upon. It burns up all the grass too, and breaks the stones. So tremendous is its noxious influence. It was formerly a general belief that if a man on horseback killed one of these animals with a spear, the poison would run up the weapon and kill not only the rider, but the horse as well. Horapollo says of the Egyptians, "But when they would represent eternity differently, they delineate a serpent with its tail covered by the rest of its body. The Egyptians call this Uraeus, from the Coptic for king, which in the Greek language signifies basilisk." Okay, and then the other animal it mentioned is the catoblepa. Again, Pliny the Elder on the catoblepa. This is pretty cool. Check this out. Another mythical creature. This is Pliny the Elder from the 1st century again that we're reading. This quote, near this, it's really important to read the footnotes and things. Near this fountain, the spring Nigris in western Ethiopia, there is found a wild beast, which is called catoblepus, an animal of moderate size, and in other respects sluggish in the movement of the rest of its limbs. Its head is remarkably heavy, and it only carries its head with greatest difficulty, being always bent down towards the earth. So this animal's head is very heavy, and it only carries the head with difficulty, its head being bent to the earth. Were it not for this circumstance, it would prove the destruction of the human race, for all who behold its eyes fall dead on the spot. So that's interesting. So we did some footnotes there. So I do a lot of rereading, but it is important. So chapter 21 of the virtues of, it's saying that these virtues, these powers, only exist in the animal while they're alive, not when they're dead. Of the virtues of things which are in them only in their lifetime, and such as remain in them even after their death. Moreover, we must know that there are some properties in things only whilst they live, and some that remain after their death. So the little fish Echinus or Remora stops ships, and the basilisk and the catoblepa kill with their sight, when they are alive, but when they are dead do no such thing. So they say that in the colic, if a live duck be applied to the belly, it takes away the pain, and herself dies. And again, it quotes Pliny the Elder, where it talks about in the 1st century. So this is Pliny the Elder in the 1st century. Another prescription mentioned for griping pains in the bowels is of a very marvelous nature. If a duck, they say, is applied to the abdomen, the malady will pass into the bird and it will die. So it's not a dead duck that does this, it's a living one that you could transfer the disease to, and then the bird will die. So they say that in the colic, if a live duck be applied to the belly, again, Agrippa is reading magical lore from the 1st century. So they say that in the colic, if a live duck be applied to the belly, it takes away the pain and herself dies. It has to be living for that. Like to this is that which Archytas says. If you take a heart newly taken out of an animal, see, this is the stuff that I don't like reading, but this is what Agrippa, people do not need to hurt animals to do magic. Absolutely not. It's not going to be more effective, not at all. It's going to be just as effective with stones and plants and minerals and metals. Hola, Jennifer. ¿Cómo estás? Interesante, dijo. If you take a heart newly taken out of an animal, and whilst it is still warm, and hang it upon one who hath a quartan fever, it drives it away. Now, what is a quartan fever? So they had these fevers where you would have an episode of shivering fits and fevers. Okay, think in the Middle Ages, you would have these fevers where you would shiver. The tertian fever, you would have these episodes every 3 days. The quartan fever every 4 days. If you take a heart newly taken out of an animal, and whilst it is yet warm, and hang it upon one that hath quartan fever, it drives it away. So if anyone swallow the heart of a lapwing, or a swallow, or a weasel, or a mole, whilst it is yet warm, with natural heat, it shall be helpful to him for remembering, understanding, and for telling. And again, Agrippa isn't just making this stuff up. There's lore about these animals being associated with knowledge and divination. Hence is this general rule, that is, that whatsoever things are taken out of animals, whether they be stones, any member, excrements, as hair, dung, nails, they must be taken from those animals whilst they be yet living. And if it be possible, that so they may live afterwards. Whence they say, when you take the tongue of a frog, you must put the frog into the water again. And if you take the tooth of a wolf, sounds dangerous, you must not kill the wolf, and so of the rest. So I really don't like reading this part because it's talking about plucking animal parts while the animal's alive. Tu también, Jennifer. You also. So it's taking it while the animal's alive. I don't like reading this. This is what Agrippa says. We have to have a look at what the text says. So Democritus, again he's quoting classical writers, So Democritus, if anyone take out the tongue of a water frog, yet living, no other part of the body sticking to it, and she be let go into the water again, and lay it upon the place where the heart beats of a woman, she shall answer truly whatsoever you ask her. Also they say that if the eyes of a frog be before sunrising bound to the sick party, and the frog be let out again blind into the water, they will drive away a tertian ague. That's that tertian fever. As also they will, being bound with the flesh of a nightingale and the skin of a hart. A hart is a male deer. That's a stag. A male deer is a hart. So they say, the flesh of a nightingale and the skin of a hart keeps one always watchful without sleep. This footnote on the quartan fever. The tertian and quartan agues are fevers characterized by violent shivering fits, such as those of malaria. In quartan ague, the paroxysm, a paroxysm is an episode, occurs every 4th day, and the tertian ague every 3rd day. Okay. Also, the ray of the fork fish, the ray is the tail. Also, the ray of the fork fish, being bound to the navel, is said to make a woman have an easier travail or labor, if it be taken from it alive, and that put into the sea again. So it's a lot of animal parts. Again, we're not doing these things. It's not going to be more effective. You don't have to hurt animals to do magic. But it's important to understand the lore of magic and to understand the animal symbolism. Just like different stones and plants have different qualities and virtues, so do different animals, according to these ancient beliefs on magic. So they say the right eye of a serpent being applied doth help the watering of the eyes, if the serpent be let go alive. And there is a certain fish or great serpent called Myris. And the footnote says it's actually talking about the eel. Yeah, Pliny says that the serpent is actually the eel. And there is a certain fish or great serpent, a serpent fish, an eel, whose eye, if it be pulled out and bound to the forehead of the patient, is said to cure the inflammation of the eyes, and that the eye of the fish grows again, and that he is taken blind that did not let the fish go. Also the teeth of all serpents, being taken out whilst they are alive, and hanged about the patient, are said to cure the quartan fever. So doth the tooth of a mole, taken out while she is alive, being afterward let go, cure the toothache. And dogs will not bark at those that have the tail of a weasel that is escaped. So it's talking about the animal is alive after. It's all these powers exist only during the lifetime of the animal. So all of these things, it's talking about taking these parts while the animal's alive and let the animal go. That if the animal dies, it'll lose the power in some of these things. And Democritus relates that the tongue of a chameleon, if it be taken from her alive, doth conduce to a good success in trials, and is profitable for women that are in travail or labor, if it be about the outside of the house. For you must take heed that it be not brought into the house, because that would be most dangerous. Bringing the tongue of the chameleon inside the house would be dangerous. So he's saying that some animal parts only have power while the animal is living or fresh. Now he's saying some things exist even after their death. Moreover, so now he's saying some things even after they die have power also. Moreover, there be some properties that remain after death. And of these the Platonists say that they are things in which the idea of the matter is less swallowed up. In these, even after death, that which is immortal in them doth not cease to work wonderful things. So in the herbs and plants pulled asunder and dried, the virtue is quick and operative, which was infused at first into them by the idea. So he gives the example that in plants, you can kill the plant, pull it up, dry it. It still has the power of the plant. With these plants, it has nothing to do with even after the plant dies, the herbs still have power in them. Okay? So in herbs and plants pulled asunder and dried, that virtue is quick and operative, which was infused into them by the idea. So now it's saying there are some powers even after death, like in plants. The plant doesn't need to be living. The power's in the herb. So they could be dried, hung up. The plant still has the power. Thence it is that as the eagle, all her lifetime, doth overcome all other birds, so also her feathers after her death destroy and consume the feathers of all other birds. Upon the same account doth a lion's skin destroy all other skins, and the skin of the hyena, it says civet cat, but the freak said civet cat, but it's actually hyena, destroys the skin of the panther, and the skin of a wolf corrodes the skin of a lamb. And some of these do not do it by way of corporeal contract, but also sometimes by their very sound. So a drum made of the skin of a wolf makes a drum made of a lamb's skin not to sound. Also a drum made of the skin of the fish called rochet drives away all creeping things, at what distance soever the sound of it is heard. And the strings of an instrument made of the guts of a wolf, and being strained upon a harp or lute with strings made of sheep's guts, will make no harmony. So, it's pretty interesting. That was chapter 21. And now things are really going to pick up with Agrippa. Now things are, it's already interesting. But now the 3 books of occult philosophy, I'm really excited for the readings that are coming up. So, what can we draw from what we have read here? First of all, I mean, it just is what it is. This is medieval and Renaissance magic. It's talking about taking animal parts while they're alive. It is what it is. It's awful. We should not do it. We don't need to do that. But that's what Agrippa's talking about. And it's interesting that he talks about some powers and things are only during their lifetime and other things even after their death. And he gives the example. When you can kill a plant. You can hang it up and dry it. It still has that power. Eagle's feathers still have power even after the eagle dies, for example. And it's interesting to see that, for one thing, Agrippa is quoting from the 1st century. He's quoting from Pseudo Albertus Magnus, Pseudo Albertus Magnus in the 13th century. He's quoting Pliny the Elder in the 1st century. So Agrippa isn't making things up. He is trying to continue ancient knowledge. And we also see that animals have symbolic meaning. They have the mythical, the language of animals. If we could learn to speak the language of animals, then it can help us to understand our dreams. Our dreams. If you see certain animals in your dreams, you may see a wolf in your dream, and you know that, oh, the wolf could be martial or solar. You see a wolf in your dream or a panther. So people talk about spirit animals and stuff, right? So animals you see in your dreams, astral projection, scrying stones, you may see different animals occur, or dreams. Also omens. Maybe you notice a particular bird, or you notice a bee, or you notice a particular flower. You're learning to speak the language of nature. You're learning to really speak the language of the wind and of rivers, of plants and animals and stones. You're becoming aware of magic running through, like electricity running through the natural world. You're learning to listen to that small, still, subtle voice in nature. You're learning to listen to the whispering of the wind, more or less. This is magic. You're learning to understand the language of stones, plants, and animals. So we're getting into the meaning of animals. Remember that the material world was seen as a shadow, a reflection or a shadow from a higher realm. So all of these qualities that we see in the divine and celestial realms are reflected below in the different kingdoms. The kingdoms of minerals and stones and metals, the kingdom of vegetables or plants, of animals. There's certain fish that are of Venus. Certain fish, think of piranhas, that are very martial. Certain fish that may have like a rainbow type of thing to it that could be seen as solar. There's certain stones, certain metals, plants, animals. There are birds that are solar. There are birds that are martial, like Mars. Birds that eat up flesh and are predators and are hunters. Those types of birds would be seen as martial types of birds. Okay, so the creatures that live in the water, the creatures that live in the air, that crawl upon the ground, and of course these could be divided up into the four elements. Birds to air, fish to water, things that creep upon the earth, to the earth. And then also within a plant, you have the different elements and things. So like flowers are airy, the roots are earthy, the seeds are fiery, the leaves are watery. So it's really understanding this way of kind of cataloging the world in a magical way. So anyways, that is the reading of Agrippa for today. That was the 3 Books of Occult Philosophy by Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, Book 1, Chapter 21. And now things are going to start getting really interesting. So I'm really excited for that. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. And we're going to keep working through Agrippa. We're going to work through the whole thing together. It's going to be awesome. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see y'all in the next video. All right. Have a great day, y'all. Thank you so much.